I had just emerged topside at the Acera spaceport, there to scout out the salvageability of some rocket thrusters. I'd been tipped off that they'd probably be somewhere around the old rocket assembly warehouse, so not wanting to waste any time and resources, I made my way straight there, the trip punctuated by a distant, vibrating drone. I arrive, the rocket thrusters are right there ahead of me, but further afield, I spot the source of that terrible noise. The silhouette, massive, crab-like, gives it away, but so too does the heat generated by its cacophonous, frightening gun. This is an Ark Bastion. The Arks are robots that surveil the surface world, guarding its precious spoils from intrepid raiders. Intelligent and menacing, they turn Ark raiders into a would-be stealth game, as getting spotted by one means all others in the area will be pinged to your location, their danger and verisimilitude being the product of machine learning trained AI and animations. They behave like real robots because, in a way, they are real robots, adapting to their environment and moving around in unpredictable and dynamic ways. But if the Bastion's firing, then that means it has to be firing at someone. And if I'm gonna get to the rocket thrusters I came up to take a look at in the first place, without being turned to Swiss cheese, then I'm gonna have to deal with it one way or another. As I get closer, I see the shape of another raider in the distance. I take cover, draw my trusty single-shot rifle, take aim at a weak spot I can see on one of the Bastion's legs, and pull the trigger. I hope the silo is enough to signal to my fellow raiders that I'm friendly, and that I'm willing to work together to solve our shared problem. Over the next 6 minutes, myself and 2 other perfect strangers labor to take this thing down. One of us doesn't make it, but we're joined at the 11th hour by another raider who helps us land the killing blow.
Is it dead?
And then, when the dust had finally settled and we were left to figure out what to do with the spoils of this mechanical beast, I wondered, what would happen now? Would someone try and pull the trigger on the rest of us, taking everything for themselves? Would we loot the thing and then go on our separate ways, only to lose it all to a wandering Ark Wasp or Hornet, barely a few bullets left to defend myself with?
Of course, none of that happened. We talked and joked and looted and then extracted together safely. Except for Lou, whose model got stuck between this fence and this rock right next to the extract point. We tried everything we could to get him out of there without killing him, but it didn't work. He said Hollow and I could just extract without him. Rest in peace, my fallen brother. Hope you're doing well out there. This story has stayed with me after nearly 50 hours with Ark Raiders. It's a situation I've now run into on more than one occasion, and one that's not unique to me, as the entire communal story surrounding Ark Raiders, for the most part, has become one of unexpected cooperation. It's the story of a game whose structure is built not just on its clever mechanics and polished design, but on the trust and humanity of those who play it. And it makes Ark Raiders a truly rewarding and, at times, life-affirming experience.
And then you extract, and the game completely undermines itself.
The second half of Ark Raiders loop takes place in Speranza, a neighborhood in the city of Toledo, something I only know from reading the Codex, something I encourage none of you to do. The last bastion of human civilization hidden underground. It's where you go to craft new items and gear out of all the junk you pick up on the surface, shop for stuff you might need in a pinch, accept quests, manage your inventory, customize your raider, you get the idea. It's here that you come into contact with the characters that populate Ark Raiders' world. Characters that after so much time spent listening to real human voices as you work together to kill Ark, or exchange brief hellos, or trash talk after PvP, are impossible to not cringe at when they open their mouths to spew inhuman, weirdly inflected voice lines devoid of character.
Great. My lead points to a group of researchers that worked out of the Research and Administration building by the dam. So that'd be a good place to start.
It's in Speranza that you first start to realize that Ark Raiders was made with generative AI. Let's get into why.
This is not the first time Arc Raiders developer Embark Studios has come under fire for their use of AI. Their 2023 shooter The Finals, their first game as a studio, drew attention and concern over its use of an AI text-to-speech, or TTS, tool to generate voice lines for characters in the game. Embark claims that it does this to save time, and that key to their open stance on the matter, the way they use the tool is ethical in that they pay actors to contribute samples that are then fed into the model so as to most efficiently spit out flatly delivered and unmotivated lines of dialogue.
No, they're not thieves. They're simply leveraging intelligent tools to speed up the process of producing a video game while keeping costs low, all to the benefit of the player. This issue has now reared its ugly head in Arc Raiders, where the same TTS process has been used at the very least to voice the various barks and callouts your character can shout out in-game. Things like the ping system, being able to call out the name of each item in the game, or the way your character can robotically enunciate "don't shoot" at the press of a few buttons. But whether or not this is the extent of Arc Raiders' use of AI is a little bit murkier.
Per the AI disclosure on the game's Steam page, the developers describe how their game uses AI-generated content like this. During the development process, we may use procedural and AI-based tools to assist with content creation. In all such cases, the final product reflects the creativity and expression of our own development team. In an interview conducted by Jamie Hoare over at PC Games N, Embark design director Virgil Watkins assures us that there's no use of Gen AI in Arc Raiders, stating, "Arc Raiders in no way uses generative AI whatsoever. We use something called machine learning, or reinforcement learning, and that's to do with the locomotion for our larger drones with multiple legs, but there's no generative content whatsoever."
A weird thing to say, diverting from the question of generative AI to focus on the game's use of machine learning to handle the procedural animation of the arcs in-game. A neat bit of tech that does increase the immersion and lead to some really dynamic combat encounters, but not the kind of AI that people are having questions about them using. The Steam page itself, in its disclaimer, even mentions that the developers may have used both procedural and AI-based tools to help create content for the game.
Jamie Hoare, a good interviewer, catches this weird little bit of misdirection, calling Watkins' attention to that Steam page disclaimer, to which Watkins says he's not totally sure, as he's not responsible for the storefront page, before actually, clarifying, what did he say? Oh yeah, as you stated, it's the same as the finals. We use that text-to-speech model. That is, we hire and contract voice actors for it. It's part of their contract that we use it, AI, for this purpose. And that allows us to do things like our ping system, where it's capable of saying every single item name, every single location name, and compass directions. That's how we can get that without needing to have someone come in every time we create a new item for the game. This whole bit here in the PC Games N interview with Virgil Watkins really stands out to me, because he basically can't commit to disclosing the actual extent of AI use on Arc Raiders. How can you say the game in no way uses generative AI whatsoever when you're training a Gen AI model on actors' voices to spit out voice lines without them having to call in actors and pay them to utter those words? Why, when pressed about the game's use of AI, would you first say that actually it's not AI, it's just this neat tech we use to help animate our cool robots everyone loves? Then, when asked more directly about the company's own statement on the matter appended to the game's Steam page listing, weirdly feign ignorance as to its content after being basically handed the perceived reason behind it, the TTS stuff, before being like, yeah, you got me, we just use a TTS model, but it's trained on real voice actors and it's in their contract, and without it we couldn't have a guy in-game utter the name of every fiddly little piece of loot or object, something people really actually care about.
It's a weird interview. It's a weird dance around the subject, eventually arriving back at the same topic that was already mulled over back in 2023 with the finals. A frankly safe place to land for someone representing Embark is, unfortunately, the use of a contractually agreed upon TTS model to handle voice acting for the game's ping system isn't as egregious and all-encompassing as some of the other examples of generative AI being forced down our throats on a daily basis. It's quaint, something only the Luddites will get mad about, a hill a company now as thoroughly and successfully in the spotlight as Embark can safely die on. End of story. Please, enjoy the game.
Except this all feels too convenient. Right. If the TTS for the ping system is all Embark is willing to publicly claim they leverage AI for in Arc Raiders, then why is the disclosure on Steam so vague? Especially when compared to the one they have up for the finals, where it clearly states, during the development process, we may use procedural and AI-based tools to assist with content creation. In all such cases, the final product reflects the creativity and expression of our own development team. Examples include voiceover audio, where we utilize text-to-speech tools to, e.g., generate the audio for our in-game commentators Scotty and June. All it takes is one listen to how characters like Celeste, or Tianwen, or Apollo speak to realize, oh, they just use TTS for every voice line in the game. And once you make that leap, once you start comparing Steam AI disclosures to the fumbled words of its developers, it's not too hard to make the next leap. That is, towards realizing that perhaps most of what we see in Arc Raiders, contrary to what Embark might want you to believe, is generated by AI. Alright, I just want to say, this is all conjecture. I don't know what's going on inside Embark Studios, I'm not a journalist, and I'm not a game developer. But if you and I can get real for a second, isn't there a weird vibe to everything in this game? Weird vibes alone aren't enough to immediately denote the use of AI. Already there have been multiple legitimate artists who have been dragged by overly zealous mobs on social media over their art too closely resembling generative AI content, but for the most part, it's still a relatively simple task of discerning AI-generated content when you come across it if you know what to look for. A certain collapse of information where a human would add specific details, stock poses and lighting setups, rote and repetitive turns of phrase or sentence structures, ambiguous and unmotivated line delivery punctuated by the sudden bizarre choice. These are the kinds of things that tell me, when looking at a random anonymous work of art, that generative AI was used in its creation.
But let's take a step back for a second and talk about Embark's founder, Patrick Soderlund. As the current CEO of Embark and previous VP of Operations at EA and CEO of DICE, Soderlund is a man who has spent his entire career as a business executive within the games industry. After the release of Battlefield 5, Soderlund founds Embark alongside Magnus Norden, Rob Runeson, Stefan Strandberg, Jenny Holdshiner, and Johan Andersson, all former EA and DICE division heads. Now, Soderlund has been very vocal about his support for and interest in AI tech. But what I'd like to focus on is this presentation, given alongside then Nexon CEO Owen Mahoney at the 2019 Morgan Stanley Video Gaming Symposium, just 1 year after the founding of Embark, thanks to the financial support of their publisher, Nexon. Mahoney and Soderlund are there to pitch investors on Nexon stock, sure, but they're also there to talk about the future of the video games business.
Let me go out on a limb here. I think that AI is going to change everything. It's massively important for the future of interactive entertainment.
Now we'll get to Mahoney, trust me, but for now, I want to skip forward to Soderlund's bit, because it's here that we get a glimpse into the interior workings of the company and the philosophical premise upon which it was founded. Basically, Soderlund believes, perhaps rightly, that the artistic and conceptual progress of video games as a medium has been incremental rather than transformational. He cites playing Doom Eternal and how he had the realization that while the at the time new Doom game was smoother and more visually impressive, it was still fundamentally the same game of running around shooting guys he played back in the 90s. He then goes into how the games that have really broken out as the biggest blockbuster hits in the industry over the past 15 years or so have all been games that defy conventions. Games made by smaller, more agile teams like Minecraft and Roblox and Fortnite. Soderlund then goes on to talk about the ballooning and unsustainable scale of AAA games development. The push for bigger, more visually intensive games skyrocketing production costs. But rather than seeing how smaller, more initially simple games like Minecraft or Roblox show that there's space to carve back on the scale of games being churned out by AAA, Soderlund rationalizes that the issue really lies with the tools being used to develop them. That AAA is wasting too much money hiring too many people to try and keep up with the growing scale of the games they produce, instead of simply getting smarter about the tools they employ to make those games. And it's this realization that led him to leave EA to found Embark.
Embark was founded to reimagine what games can become, by rethinking how they should be made.
This presentation, although raising some salient points about the crashing state of the AAA games industry, arrives at all the wrong solutions, terminating in the thought that what AAA is failing to do is capitalize on the right tools that will magically steer things in the right direction. That if a small company could just somehow cut the cost of having to employ as many people while still maintaining a high production capacity, that company would save the games industry. Soderlund then tells a story about how shortly after founding Embark, he was having a discussion with a team member who asked,
what if we can get to 2x the production capacity by just using some clever tools, or 3x? And I said, what if we could get to 100? What would that look like?
From there, Embark begins to invest heavily in disruptive technology and intelligent tools to automate large parts of games development in an attempt to make 10 times more using less people. In some ways, the tools they're using are standard now across the industry. Stuff like procedural terrain building and foliage placement, but it's the way the use of these tools is framed, not simply 2xing or 3xing production capacity, but 100xing it, that makes me doubt that AI wasn't used at every level when it comes to crafting the world, characters, and writing in Arc Raiders. And then as soon as I was having that thought, Soderlund pulls up this slide where he shows us the kind of work, what we now know to be concept art for Arc Raiders from 2019, that his company is able to pump out using those intelligent tools. And I mean, disregarding the weird vibes of the images due to the fact that in 2019, generative AI models weren't capable of producing stuff like this, the timeline for creating the assets shown raises alarms.
We're using the things that we spoke about. We can build a character in 3 weeks. Not good enough yet. I want to get it down to 3 days. We're working on that. But we've gone from 4 days to 4 hours to build content like this. And the most impressive one is we've gone from 24 months to 1 month to build arguably the biggest portion of this.
If a character that used to take 4 months to produce now takes 3 weeks, if an environment that used to take 2 years to make now only takes a single month to realize, and this is back in 2019, then how can we believe that Embark Studios in 2025, when publicly available models are spitting out images identical to the ones Soderlund showed in his presentation, is only using AI to avoid the hassle of calling a voice actor into a booth?
Okay, now let's talk about Owen Mahoney. As I said before, Owen Mahoney was the president and CEO of Nexon, but left in 2025 to serve as a board member of both Hasbro and Logitech, companies I've heard are having a really normal time right now. He also used to be the head of corporate development at EA, where we can assume he built the professional relationship with Patrick Soderlund that would lead to the founding of Embark back in 2018. On his blog at owenmahoney.ai, in an article titled Deus Ex Machina, Mahoney dives deep into the philosophical and economic underpinnings of his faith in AI as the panacea of frail AAA games industry needs if it's gonna remain competitive and innovative. It's a long piece. I'm gonna leave a link to it in the description below if you'd like to take a look at it yourself, and I urge you to do so, but what I'd like to hone in on is a section where Mahoney talks about how the history of human communication is best understood as a series of unbundlings, the invention of new mediums for communication, removing a bottleneck in the flow of ideas. Communication begins as a person-to-person thing, writing unbundles speech from presence, the invention of the printing press unbundles creation from distribution, and so on and so forth until we arrive at the final unbundling, the one he claims the revolutionary tech of generative AI is ushering in, of the creation of an idea from its substantiation. It is removing the final bottleneck between thought and expression, writing the words, painting the image, filming the scene, or coding the system. When you ask Midjourney to illustrate an idea or ChatGPT to draft a letter, you are already offloading the substantiation of that idea. In game dev circles, there's a bit of a meme surrounding the ideas guy, the guy on the team that doesn't really do their job, who can't implement anything in engine, but that sure does have a lot of ideas. Executives are prime ideas guys. Guys with just the best ideas ever. Ideas that, unfortunately, up until now, they've had to pay someone else to produce. But the thing about ideas is that without the ability to substantiate what's in your head into something someone else can comprehend, then no matter how good your idea is, it's worthless. And the thing about AI is that no matter how expansive or groundbreaking of an idea you have, its substantiation can only be filtered through close approximation to something that has come before, and that the generative model is aware of. So if Embark's executives and the moneyed interests behind their work truly believe that AI is this reality-altering technological achievement, the greatest invention since the internet or the printing press or the written word, capable of finally severing the relationship between capital and labor, then how could we ever come to believe that all they're using these tools for, after investing so much money and thought and belief, is voicing a handful of one-off voice lines?
Just this week, Arc Raiders rolled out its first major update, adding a new map, Stella Montis, as well as new arcs, new items, new quests, just a bunch of neat new stuff. But alongside this, they've lowered the price of the skins in their shop. Previously, skins could be quite expensive, about 20 bucks a pop on top of the 40 USD you have to spend to buy the game. Gamers rose up, Embark acquiesced, and the prices were lowered in conjunction with the new update. A W move, say fans of Arc Raiders, and so did I, until I read this Reddit post by user TheOnlyReal143. As TheOnlyReal1 explains, what Embark have done is a practice called anchoring, whereby prices are set higher than would be reasonable on purpose, causing an outcry, only to be benevolently and wisely lowered, winning over consumer loyalty and trust. Except the new prices are still unfairly high, getting customers accustomed to making concessions for a company, riding their goodwill all the way to the bank. People like Mahoney, Soderlund, Nexon's current CEO Junghun Lee, and just about any person who stands to reap the most from having to sow the least through the implementation of generative AI, wants us to believe that the mass adoption of this tech is an inevitability, that displacing workers, disenfranchising artists, and lowering standards for what count as meaningful and valuable ideas is a good thing, actually. They believe this because they have to, because at this point, tech companies are so incestuously deep inside each other's pockets that if the AI bubble finally bursts, then they all go down with it. But these executives are not stupid. They realize people like you and me, by and large, see the writing on the wall for AI. We know it's crap, they know we know it's crap, so if they're gonna make us use it, then they have to trick us. They have to prime us for making concessions. And the best way to do that is to build trust, to sell us a mechanically solid and polished game made special less by anything it does than by what we bring to it, slowly over time building up our tolerance for the AI that's in it. If what you enjoy about Arc Raiders is its best-in-class emergent gameplay, how it crafts tense stories of man versus machine, or of encounters with bloodthirsty players out to steal what you've got, then I'm right there with you.
But the problem is that what all this uncertainty over what kinds of, or to what extent AI has been used at Embark does, is it undermines my trust. In the past couple of weeks I've been working on this video, various people at Embark have come out to make statements about the game's suspected use of generative AI, and they all double down on how the game doesn't use the tech. And even if they did, the tech still isn't good enough to deliver shippable products, and even if it was, they wouldn't want to use it. I don't want to disparage the good work done on and genuine artistry found within Arc Raiders. Just this past week, the first video in NoClip's deep dive documentary on the game's development came out, and it gave me pause. Hear interviews with the developers talking candidly about the work they did on the game, and their passion is infectious. You can tell they really love working on this game, that they believe in what they're doing, and that's something that can be felt when you sit down to actually play Arc Raiders. It's a generational multiplayer achievement. But the issue is that we know about the TTS stuff. And the problem, at least for people like me who do not value generative AI and who don't want to support it on artistic and ethical grounds, is that unfortunately, just one drop of AI is enough to poison the well of goodwill I might have had for a studio like Embark. How can we support the work of talented, passionate developers while standing firm against the tools they're made to use by their employers? How can we talk about Arc Raiders without acknowledging the contradictions that shoulder its greatest achievements?
And yeah, it sucks that things are like this, but the reason this feels so bad in particular is because Embark Studios and their handlers at Nexon broke the one thing that made the kind of experiences engendered by Arc Raiders gameplay so rewarding and memorable: my trust.